Hey everyone, Kitana here and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to my Astro community.
Business change, yeah, I like I ain't all this. Get him at my main focus.
And in today's video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about your Mercury sign. In astrology, Mercury has to do with communication, problem solving, thinking, anything having to do with logic and rationality. And I'm going to describe what your Mercury sign means for you and how that manifests in your life. And then if you guys also want to know more about Mercury in retrograde, I just did a video about that, so you guys can watch that too after you're done with this one. Okay, so let's talk about Mercury in Aries. So with Mercury in Aries, when it comes to logic, when it comes to problem solving, you are definitely the type to be impulsive. And then oftentimes how this impulsivity manifests with you is that you might just say things that aren't supposed to be said. You might just blurt things out. I feel like Aries Mercury, you're like definitely the type of person to have foot in your mouth syndrome, where you just say things and you can't take them back because you don't really think before you say things. You just say them as you're talking. And also for your logic and problem solving style or ability, you're the type of person to say it like it is. You can be very bold with your speech, very confident too. And you can be very honest as well. And overall, you're just the type of person to just say what you're thinking straight up. When it comes to logic and problem solving, you're very straightforward. You don't think too much about stuff. You just definitely do think or say whatever you're thinking at the moment. So when it comes to speech and communication and how you literally talk to people and communicate with people, you're definitely somebody who is loud. You might talk very loud. Even without knowing it, you could just naturally raise your voice. You're very assertive and bold with your speech. You can have a natural way of commanding people to listen to you because you just have a very bold way of speaking, very confident way of speaking as well. And as I said earlier, you just say things as you think them. You don't really think them through. That's why a lot of times your mouth can get you into trouble. You also might have kind of a bossy type of tone. It's not really like a soft, passive tone. It's a very aggressive or assertive type of tone with people. And I also will say you might like curse a lot. It depends on the person and your whole chart, but you might curse a lot. I can also see you maybe being like a very motivational type of speaker. Like when you speak, you naturally maybe sound like a coach or something, or maybe you are a coach, like a sports coach. I could definitely see that for Aries Mercury because the way you speak, it's very motivating to other people. Okay, so let's talk about Mercury in Taurus. Okay, so first things first, when it comes to logic and problem solving, Taurus Mercury people are very level-headed when they are solving problems. And I will say that Taurus Mercury people definitely have a good amount of common sense. They're just great at really assessing problems and thinking them through very thoroughly. Taurus Mercuries are known for being kind of slow thinkers, or kind of like slow to process things, but that's because they like to take their time and then make a decision. They don't just do things impulsively like Aries Mercury. They really think things through very, very logically and very level-headedly. So overall, they have a logical way of thinking, a very grounded way of thinking, and there's like a logical order to how they think. It's just very, very methodical. So I would say that is Taurus Mercury's strength, is that they do think things through. They take a long time to decide things, but when they do decide things, they do not change their mind. And Taurus Mercuries, if you're watching this, or if you know a Taurus Mercury person, you know they can be very stubborn when it comes to their beliefs. When it comes to any type of decision, any type of thought process, they are very firm in what they decide, and they're not going to change it for anyone. They are very resistant to change when it comes to communication, thoughts, beliefs, decisions. They just don't budge after they decided what they want. So in that sense, they are very decisive. They can also be prone to be kind of argumentative. When it comes to Taurus Mercury, like I said, once they decide on something, they feel like that's the right answer. So if you try to like have a different viewpoint than them or try to argue with them, they're gonna argue back and tell you you're wrong. I feel like that's Taurus Mercury's favorite line. It's like they'll tell people they're wrong because they feel like their decision is always right and it can't change from that. Okay, so when it comes to literal speech and communication and just overall talking with people, Taurus Mercury people can have a very kind of calming voice, very grounded, soothing type of voice. And for some men or women, they can have a very deep voice as well. Overall, when you're talking to a Taurus Mercury person, they can have a very calming way of speaking. And a lot of the times, Taurus Mercuries can have a very nice singing voice as well. And most of them, I will say, talk very slowly. If they don't talk slowly, literally, I feel like they just take forever to get to the point. Like I said, with Taurus energy, there's this element of like slowness. So they take long to decide things, true. And they also might take long to talk or like get to the point, or they just talk in a very slow, methodical way. Okay, so let's talk about Gemini Mercury. Okay, so when it comes to Mercury and Gemini, Gemini is naturally ruled by Mercury. So Mercury does do pretty well here. I will say that Gemini Mercuries tend to be very intelligent, but when it comes to logic and problem solving, I will say that Gemini Mercury people have a very fast-paced mind. They don't ever just concentrate on one thing. They're always thinking about so many different things. Their mind can be very scattered, very distracted type of thinkers. So when it comes to logic and problem solving specifically, I feel like they're great at thinking on their feet. They're great at just thinking of a solution in a very quick manner. But I will say they are very indecisive. Like I said, they're thinking of a million different possibilities. They have the ability to see both sides of everything or all sides of everything. So they can just be very indecisive and take a while to decide on things just because they see all of the options. They can also be overthinkers as well. They have a naturally very busy mind, so they're always just kind of thinking things. And then overall, when it comes to logic and just overall their thought process, they can just think about things in a very superficial way. Like I said, they appreciate this sense of variety and diversity, so they're always thinking about a bunch of things at once, but they never think about one thing too deeply, if that makes sense. It's not like they're gonna sit there and focus on one thing for like an hour straight and like think about it and obsess over it. They're just gonna bounce around almost like popcorn and think about a million different things in a very surface level way, but not focus on one thing. When it comes to speech and communication and how they literally talk to people, they might talk very fast. They might talk a lot. This is definitely like the chatterbox placement. They also might go off on tangents quite a bit. Oh my god, Gemini Mercuries are infamous for just going off on these tangents and just talking about whatever just pops into their head. They also might be very articulate. They might have a gift with words. They might be able to really like finesse people really well or talk very fast to them, and just I will say overall they're just very articulate and they do sound very intelligent when they speak. Okay, so let's talk about Cancer Mercury. So when it comes to Cancer Mercury and logic and problem solving, I will say this is a very intuitive placement. And when your Mercury is in Cancer, when you process things logically, you tend to do it from an intuitive space. You don't just use your mind strictly. It's not like a very rational placement. I will say it's very intuitive as well. And depending on the placement of this Mercury sign, I will say that you are very emotionally intelligent. And when it comes to others' thoughts and feelings, you really do consider other people's feelings and really encourage people as well. And you have the ability to sense other people's emotions and then speak and communicate with them based on that. Hence why you have probably really good emotional intelligence with people. This placement can also be very thoughtful too, very, very sentimental. You might have a very great memory. You're always like reflecting on things. You're also very mindful of what you say. You're very conscious of the things you say because like I said, you're very conscious of other people's emotions and you speak based on that. So you're very conscious of what you think and what you say and what you express to people. And then I will say you can be very secretive too. Cancer placements tend to kind of be, you know, like the crab, right? And they kind of retreat within their shell. So sometimes you can be secretive with what you think or say. You can also be somewhat defensive too. If someone says something that triggers your emotions, you're going to be very defensive about it towards them. And I will say Cancer Mercury can be somewhat passive too. I will say passive aggressive, especially with speech or just communicating with people. They won't directly say what they want, but they will kind of dance around it and be sort of passive about it. Okay, so when it comes to speech and literal communication, Cancers tend to have a very nurturing voice. They can have a very calming voice. Overall, I would say their voice is very gentle. They might be very funny too. If you know them really well, you probably know Cancer Mercuries are kind of really funny. And a lot of the times you can hear their emotional state in their voice. Like if they're stressed out about something or emotionally stressed, maybe their voice like cracks or something. You can always hear their emotions in their voice. Also, they let others speak first. They have the tendency to kind of consider others before themselves. And they also might have a very warming voice, maybe like a very warming approach to conversations. Okay, so let's talk about Leo Mercury. Okay, so Leo Mercury, this one is really funny to talk about. They tend to be very animated with their speech, very, very exaggerated. These are the type of people to be like storytellers, like the people that just know how to command an audience. They're really great at getting people to listen to them and having this authority when they speak. And so because of this, they can tend to have sort of like a know-it-all type of like way of talking or communicating. They can also be sort of braggish, like they like to brag maybe, or be boastful. They can also be maybe even loud or obnoxious. They might just naturally have a very loud voice. And I will add that Leo Mercury might have a talent for speaking, especially public speaking, speaking to large audiences. They might just have a talent for speaking publicly. And when it comes to logic and problem solving, Leo Mercury is definitely a very creative placement. It's a very creative mind. So when you do solve problems, when you do think about things logically, it's not like a very serious way of thinking, I guess. It's more so about like, how can I implement my creativity in this? How can I embellish this? I feel like Leo Mercury definitely embellish a lot of things they do or say or talk about. And then also when it comes to logic and problem solving, you're very optimistic. You're also very direct or straightforward. When it comes to solving problems or thinking about things, you just try to think about the positive, or you try to think about how straightforwardly you can solve something. Also, when it comes to logic, you might be someone who is very individualistic, like you always think about me first, or you process things in a very me first type of way. Okay, so let's talk about Virgo Mercury. So with Mercury in Virgo, of course, Virgo is naturally ruled by Mercury, so Mercury does pretty well in the sign of Virgo. And I will say overall, it makes somebody very intelligent. When it comes to logic and problem solving, these people are very, very rational thinkers. And I feel like that's one of Mercury in Virgo's strengths, is that they can really like solve a lot of problems because they have a very detail-oriented mind. They can see the details in literally anything. I feel like they see the smallest details of everything. So when it comes to problem solving, they're able to create a plan or even create just a logical way of solving something. And then also Mercury in Virgo is a very critical thinker. Like I said, they see the details of everything, so they're always they have this very critical lens of looking at things, of thinking about things. They're just very, very critical. And sometimes that can manifest as like being judgmental. So sometimes Virgo Mercury always like has like a comment about something that's like needs to be fixed, but that's just how they're looking at things. They're literally seeing the details of everything and always seeing kind of what needs to be fixed. And then also Virgo Mercury has a very like fixated mind. You have a very focused mind. You can have the tendency to obsess on things, especially like the finer details, but they can have a very focused type of mind, which is a very great thing when it comes to work and stuff. They can focus on something for long periods of time, but sometimes it could border on obsessive. And then of course this placement is definitely the perfectionist when it comes to anything having to do with Mercury, like talking, speaking, writing, just doing anything with their hands, like sewing, driving. They are the perfectionist. Like it has to be perfect. It has to look good. It has to be aesthetic. If something is out of order, it will really trigger like a Virgo Mercury person because they're so perfectionist about everything, and they can see all the details. So when one detail is out of order, then they are just like chaotic. Okay, so when it comes to speech and communication and Virgo Mercury's like voice, Virgo Mercury people can sometimes have trouble explaining things because they are the overthinkers, right? They're always thinking about things. They're fixated on maybe many things at once. So when it comes to explaining things, I feel like they might have trouble explaining it because it's just like information overload in their mind that maybe sometimes they can have trouble expressing that. But on the other hand, they can also express things in a very succinct way, maybe in a very straightforward way. It really depends on the condition of your Mercury. But anyway, they can also have the tendency to talk fast, maybe talk very nervously. Like I said, they think a lot of things. Their mind is always very busy, but they don't necessarily say everything they're thinking. So sometimes they can talk kind of in a nervous way. And of course, I feel like they have the tendency to over-explain things. Like I said, they have this information overload going on in their mind. So when they try to explain stuff, it's just like overdoing it because, like I said, they have the tendency to see all the finer details. So when they see all the finer details, they try to explain that to people. People are just like, what are you talking about? I don't see what you see. So they just over explain things a lot. And they also might have a writing talent. They also might be like bookworms, but I really want to emphasize you might be good at writing, especially. And I feel like you like writing so much just because you might like reading a lot. And like I said, this might be like the really like bookworm type of placement. Okay, so let's talk about Libra Mercury. Okay, so with Libra Mercury, when it comes to logic and problem solving, especially, these are the people that always see both sides. And when it comes to solving problems or processing things logically, I feel like they always try to maintain the balance. They always have this kind of scale in their head. They're always trying to see the fairness of something. They're trying to see what is the best decision. With that, of course, they are very, very indecisive because they're always striving for this balance. They can just have trouble deciding on things. This definitely isn't the most decisive Mercury sign. And this also is somebody who likes to think about others before themselves. They're definitely the type to be like if they're talking in a group dynamic, they might get spoken over a lot, or they might let people talk before them. Either way, they want to maintain this like energy of peace. So they just kind of like try to like maintain it by letting people speak or listening to others and not trying to assert their opinion or what they want to say too much. So sometimes that can manifest as them being kind of passive, but I feel like it's more them trying to like allow others to speak and feel like good about themselves too. And then this is also a placement that kind of reflects a lot off of other people. Like what other people say, they take into a lot of consideration and then kind of frame the conversation based on what someone else says, if that makes sense. Like they're not going to initiate it, but they'll just kind of bounce off of what other people say and like kind of be like, oh, I agree, and just like add on and not really create their own topic, but kind of bounce off of other people. Okay, so when it comes to speech and communication and just their voice and how they talk to people, Libra Mercury is definitely very persuasive. These are definitely like the smooth talkers, the very charming people. They can make anything sound good. They can really roast you and like it'll sound good because they have such a way with words. They might have the gift of speaking very articulately. And they might even speak very elegantly or speak very, what's the word I was thinking of? They might speak in a very eloquent way. And overall, when it comes to their voice, they might have a very smooth voice, a very pleasant voice, maybe a feminine voice. Either way, they have a nice voice. They have a nice way of speaking. They're articulate. They also might be kind of passive with their language. They're not the type to really, like, they might not curse at all, or they might speak in a very polite, proper way. They're not gonna really use too much slang or curse, I feel like, because they want to maintain this kind of polite way of speaking with people. Okay, so let's talk about Scorpio Mercury. Okay, so when it comes to logic and problem solving, with this placement, these are definitely very strategic thinkers. And on top of being strategic, I feel like this is a very intuitive placement as well. These people are great at catching liars or kind of detecting deceptive people. Either way, they will definitely clock you if you are lying. I feel like Scorpio Mercury have a gift of telling, being able to tell when people are lying or trying to deceive them. And like I said, they are very strategic. I feel like they have the ability to be very observant as well. So when they are observant, they have the ability to see like all the details of everything and then be strategic about what they say. Be strategic about what they do. Be strategic about how they solve problems. And this placement also has the tendency to be very interested in psychology, very interested in the occult, very interested in the, you know, deeper meanings, deeper truths of life. I feel like these are the type of people to be very detective-like. They might have a very detective-like type of mind because they always want to find out the deeper truth. They never see things for surface level. They see the deepest meaning behind it. And this definitely manifests as them kind of being obsessive. I feel like Scorpio energy definitely can be very obsessive. So when you have it in the Mercury sign, it's like you are very obsessive about certain things and then you have obsessive thoughts about it. And like I said, you have this detective type of mind. So when it comes to like this detective energy, you're obsessive about things, thoughts, ideas, concepts, maybe about like psychology or astrology, or consciousness. You're just a very deep thinker. And sometimes this can manifest as you being kind of pessimistic or very cynical. Like I said, you see the deepest, darkest parts of life and you're not afraid to go there, right? So with that, you're kind of pessimistic, maybe even paranoid, because you're just so cautious of the deeper meanings and like the subconscious mind that you can be very pessimistic and paranoid. Okay, so when it comes to your literal voice, how you communicate, and how you speak with people, you might have a very seductive, very compelling type of voice. And depending on your chart and like who you are, you might have a very kind of just deep or sultry voice. Something about your voice is very compelling to people or magnetic. People just want to listen to you for some reason. And then also when it comes to communication, you might have the ability to really pull secrets out of people. And maybe people who wouldn't even tell their secrets to people tell you their secrets for some reason. I feel like you're good at getting information out of people. And you can also be very secretive or private about your thoughts. You're definitely someone who is a very deep thinker, and you don't say everything you think. You don't say what you really think or believe all the time. You're just very private and protective about what you really think, especially in social dynamics. You can have a very secretive way of being. Okay, so let's talk about Sagittarius Mercury. So with Sag Mercury, when it comes to problem solving and logic, you're definitely a very optimistic person, a very open-minded person as well. And when it comes to this Sagittarius, this Jupiter energy, you're somebody who always sees the ideal. You don't necessarily consider like the negative parts of something all the time. Because of that, you always see the positive outcome. You always see the best version of something. And then you're also very open-minded. You're somebody who loves to learn. Maybe you love to teach others things. Just your way of communicating too. It's like you're a natural teacher. You might have a lot of wisdom about you. Like you might just say things that are really like prophetic or very impactful to other people. And I will say one of the challenges with this Mercury is that you do fail to see the finer details sometimes. Like I said, you have this ability to see the bigger picture, to see the ideal. But in doing that, you kind of forget the smaller details and you kind of gloss over them. So in that sense, you kind of just don't think about all parts of the situation. You might just think about the outcome that you want to see. And then, of course, the most obvious thing with Sag Mercury is that you are very honest, almost to the point of sometimes being obnoxious. Like you're the definition of someone who just says it like it is. No filter, unprovoked. You will just say what you're thinking, or you say what you think is the truth. And then sometimes you'll like say the truth or be really honest in like a social setting, and some people will kind of be rubbed the wrong way, but you kind of, I don't know, I feel like you don't really recognize that. You'll just kind of say what you say, and then it just kind of seems kind of like obnoxious. And overall, it's just kind of like this kind of reckless way of saying the truth, I guess. Also, you're somebody who is very enthusiastic. When you speak, it's very boisterous. People want to listen to you because you might be very loud as well. You really speak almost like from your chest. Like it's very, very boisterous. Like I said, when it comes to speech and communication, you might be very loud, somewhat obnoxious. And I feel like when you are communicating with other people, you just say what you feel. You speak from your heart. You're not afraid to say what you want. You're not afraid to speak your mind. I feel like that's the biggest gift you have. You're not going to be quiet for anyone. You're going to say what you really want to say and say it from your chest and say it from your heart. Okay, so let's talk about Capricorn Mercury. So Capricorn Mercury, when it comes to logic and problem solving, I will say you are a very great problem solver. Because when it comes to this Capricorn energy in your Mercury sign, you're just a very level-headed person. You're a very methodical thinker. You have the ability to kind of see the bigger picture and really calculate and understand and articulate the best way of going about something. And also you have the ability to kind of think in the future too, because I feel like Capricorn Mercury, you're always kind of thinking ahead. So given that, you might be very great at just solving problems because you can see all steps of the problems. You're also very plan oriented. You might be very organized just in general. So when it comes to thinking about things or processing things, you think about it in a very methodical, very plan oriented type of way. And given this, I will say Capricorn Mercuries give really great advice. I feel like they're really great at, being so level-headed that when they give advice, it's like, it almost brings a lot of clarity to another person because they're able to really see and flesh out this plan they make in their head. And their best trait, I feel like, is processing before they act. They aren't the type to be very impulsive thinkers. This isn't Aries Mercury. This is Capricorn Mercury. So they're really going to think and process before they do something. And one of the other things is that they can be very doubtful or very pessimistic. They're definitely very, very cynical too. And it can be hard for you sometimes to be optimistic because you kind of see like maybe the negative parts of things, or you're just a very cynical person. And very, like I said, maybe even doubtful too. Okay, so when it comes to speech and communication, Capricorn Mercury definitely has a very authoritative voice, a very commanding type of voice. They might even have a voice that is very serious or almost even monotone. When it comes to the Saturn Capricorn energy, it's very dry. It's very, oh my god, that reminds me, they have very dry humor too. But it's not a very animated voice. It's not a very enthusiastic voice. It is very serious, very stern, and very authoritative. And they really are controlling about how they come across to other people. When it comes to communication dynamics, they are very conscious about what they say, and they're not going to say anything that they don't really mean. They're just going to say things very straightforwardly. They're going to say things that need to be said. These people can be very like dry texters, like they will text you like 1 or 2 words, but it's because they're not going to embellish everything they say. It's not like Leo Mercury. They're going to just really say what they said and just be very straightforward about it. And that might not be with many words or emojis, but they're just going to be very straightforward about it. Okay, so let's talk about Aquarius Mercury. So with Aquarius Mercury, Mercury is exalted in the sign of Aquarius, and that basically means that Mercury performs the best when it is in Aquarius. And how this manifests with people is that it makes someone very, very intelligent. And so when it comes to logic and problem solving, you are a very innovative thinker. You are the person who is thinking outside of the box. You don't think in a very 3D, very mundane way. The way you think is almost in a very expanded, it's almost like your consciousness is very expanded too. So that just makes you a very intelligent type of person. And you're also a very independent thinker. You're not somebody who falls victim to groupthink. In fact, you probably usually think a lot differently than a lot of other people, and you're okay with that. And I would really describe you as a very free thinker, as an independent thinker, as someone who thinks outside of the box, and the way you logically process things or problem solve is in a very out of the box type of way. And I feel like you have this gift of thinking of very innovative solutions to things, very creative solutions to things. Like I said, you're not thinking in a very like mundane way, you're just thinking on this different level. And then also I will say you have a very scientific type of mind. You're very observant. Every time I talk about Aquarius energy, I think of like the eagle metaphor. So with Aquarius Mercury, I feel like you're the type to like see above a situation or be very observant in that sense. Like you have this way of like overseeing everything and then kind of picking out what makes sense to you or picking out what resonates with you. In that sense, you are very observant. And then just to touch on your scientific mind, I will say you are very you're like a truth seeker too. You always seek the truth or what is the deeper meaning in something. You're always kind of picking apart things in your mind. You're not just saying things for face value. You're always questioning things. And then Aquarius Mercury is kind of known too for being kind of like this creative genius energy. When you have this Mercury energy in the sign of Aquarius, like I said, you're thinking outside of the box. And when you think in such an innovative way, you have this creative genius quality about you, where you do things and think things and create things that has not been done before because you are so creative and you're thinking outside of a regular sense. Okay, so when it comes to speech, communication, voice, and just how you speak with people on a daily basis, you're definitely someone who can be very misunderstood. I don't know if I just mentioned this already, but basically you guys kind of think in the future. You're thinking ahead. A lot of your thoughts, ideas, and concepts that you have in your mind aren't mundane. They aren't what everyone else is thinking. So a lot of times you kind of tend to be ahead of the crowd in a sense. So that kind of makes you misunderstood. Like you might express a concept that you think about, but like the people you say it to don't really understand that concept. So there's always like a disconnect with what you're thinking and how you express it. And that leads you to be very misunderstood. And then also I will mention that, especially when it comes to logic and problem solving and stuff like that, you might have been somebody in school who skipped a grade. This is definitely somebody who, like I said, is very intelligent, and you do tend to think in the future. So you might have been very ahead of your time, ahead of your grade level when you were a kid. Even if you're a kid and you didn't like skip a grade, maybe you always kind of felt smarter than the other kids just because you're always kind of thinking forward rather than thinking at the level you are at. And then when it comes to just like mundane speaking or voice, you might have a very unique or distinct voice. When it comes to communication, like I said, you might be misunderstood often. You also might speak in a very sporadic way. Like you have a lot of intelligent concepts concepts, but maybe you have trouble communicating them, or you have trouble communicating them in a way that other people will understand. Like I said, you might be at a different level of consciousness, but the fact of the matter is that some people just won't understand you. So overall, your communication style is very sporadic. It's not very consistent or very methodical or grounded way of speaking or voice. It's not like a Cap Mercury or like a Taurus Mercury. It's very sporadic. And then also you guys might have this way of speaking that is very like, I don't know, almost like know-it-all type of energy. Like know-it-all energy, but it's not very like snooty know-it-all. It's more so like I know this is the correct truth type of energy. When it comes to Aquarius energy in general, people think of like God complexes. So they might speak with kind of like a God complex. Like, oh my God, my thoughts, ideas, blah, blah, blah is very supreme. I'm so smart, blah, blah, blah. So that might be how you come across to people. It's not really arrogance. It's more so just you feeling like what you're saying is the supreme truth. Okay, so let's talk about Pisces Mercury. Okay, so with Pisces Mercury, when it comes to logic and problem solving, you are definitely a very imaginative, very creative mind. The unique thing I will say about Pisces Mercury, especially as it pertains to logic and problem solving, is that Pisces energy does not lend itself to structure or rationality or logic. So when you have it in the Mercury sign, it's like you're not a very rational thinker. You're not a logical thinker. It's not like you're like Virgo Mercury or like a Cap Mercury. You're somebody who is very imaginative the way they think and the way they process things. And really with the way you think, it's very idealistic. You think about the ideal. You think about things in such like a, you know, rose-colored glasses type of way. It's not necessarily like you see things very clearly or rationally, but you see it in a very idealistic, very creative type of way. And then also you might be very slow to process things. Like I said, with Pisces energy, it's not very structured. It's not like it's very rational or logical. So when you try to process things with this Mercury sign, you might be kind of slow to like understand things or take a little bit longer to understand things than other people. Also might be kind of forgetful too. I think with Neptune influence, Jupiter influence, Pisces influence, you can be pretty forgetful. You can be somebody who like maybe just goes off on a tangent and forgets what you're talking about. And just generally not be super sharp to understand things right away. Okay, so when it comes to your literal speech, communication, voice, how you speak to people on a daily basis, Pisces Mercury is definitely the person who speaks in a very melodic way. It's almost like when you speak, like your natural tone of voice is like very poetic. Like you speak like you're reading a poem, even if you're not. And because you speak in such a melodic way, you might have a gift for poetry or spoken word, maybe even have a gift for creative writing. Anything having to do with writing, speaking, and creativity, you really do thrive at. And then you also might have a very prophetic voice too, or you might just say very prophetic things. Like, and what I mean by that is just someone who like just says things that are very, you have a lot of wisdom when you speak, or you might say something that has a lot of wisdom and people really resonate with it. You're also very intuitive too. I think a good example of a Pisces Mercury is Yara Shahidi. She's definitely somebody who speaks in a very melodic way, in a very prophetic way. They just say these very wise things that you just, I don't know, they just stick with you. I feel like whatever Pisces Mercury says really has a tendency to stick and have a really profound impression on others. And then I touched on this a bit already, but like I said, you might be very intuitive. You really speak from your intuition. You might have some like psychic abilities. You might be able to like really channel information from like the like source, or maybe even in your dreams, or you just kind of channel information. Like you're very intuitive in that way, maybe even psychic.